Let's not hang about. For those of you that are already fans of the show, we kind of do wrestling news. We kind of talk about the TV shows that have been happening, and we talk about some wrestling gossip and various other bits and bobs over the past year since lockdown started. But this is WrestleMania. Let's do a WrestleMania special. For those of you who are regular watchers of the channel, then you'll know that I have a video up called You Never Forget Your First. Now, You Never Forget Your First, of course, is actually the first WrestleMania that I saw and is actually one of my favorites. I'm not going to talk about it too in depth here. It's one of my favorite WrestleMania matches, Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper, and also features the first time I actually saw something that didn't quite seem right, which was Papa Shango's run-in at the end. Now, for anybody who wants to go and check that, it is on the YouTube page. It is called You Never Forget Your First. Yes, I get the double entendre, but we won't talk about that. But thank you for tuning into the WrestleMania special. Today, we're going to do our WrestleMania predictions. But before that, we're going to head straight into the wrestling news. Now, normally, we're going to have lots of fancy bumpers and everything here. But for this week, we're just going to fire straight in. Now, for everybody who's kind of complaining about Peacock in America, and for everybody in the UK who's gloating about the fact that, you know, we still have the proper version here, which for me isn't actually working all the time. So, Stephanie McMahon did say this week that there was a deal to sell their streaming rights in 2014. Now, she did say they started looking at it before the pandemic, maybe even 2 years ago. We started looking at this space. It's funny because my dad has always taught me that you have to stay slightly ahead of the curve. You never want to be so far ahead that people can't get it, XFL, and you never want to be behind. Well, creative has been pretty stale recently, so I would disagree with some of the things that Stephanie wants to say. But the interesting takeaway here is that there were talks of selling the streaming rights in the past. Now, the WWE Network was a massive step. It kind of wrestled control back from the pay-per-view companies and gave some greater control for WWE over length of pay-per-view shows, over distribution options and stuff. Some of the pay-per-view companies still broadcast WWE shows on pay-per-view. The numbers are so small. I think it's Jim Cornette and 2 other people are the only ones who buy WWE pay-per-views through the pay-per-view providers. But interesting to hear from Stephanie that there is plans in the past to have sold the streaming rights. Obviously, I've said on this show, I think the UK rights and several other countries, we're going to see them kind of bundled together and sold on. I know BT Sports have got their own app, and I know there's several other companies here in the UK that would be very happy to get the streaming rights to the WWE. Hopefully, they don't do as bad a job as they've done with it in America, because the launch there has been absolutely horrible. But the Americans, every American is bitching and moaning about it. Just imagine being here in the UK, and what we've had to deal with was we get it later than everybody, because who cares about the UK audience, which kept the company alive in the 90s. And then what we get is a streamed back, a cut back service that wasn't quite everything that we thought we were going to get. And then it kind of added on and we got everything. It was a very quick process, but I remember the day the network launched, we didn't have all of the pay-per-views, we didn't have everything, and then over the next few weeks and stuff, we got everything that we wanted, and then got all the new content that we wanted as well, like old Saturday nights and stuff. So some patience from people who are actually getting a better deal through Peacock, because it's actually going to cost less money for most people. Some people get it through their cable provider in America, so they're now getting the network for free and still moaning. You're going to get to see WrestleMania for free, or for some people, it's like $10 for 4 months worth of the network. That's not a bad deal. Now, let's talk about deals. This is one of the things that everybody thinks I kind of plan these, where I talk about some of the things that are happening in the wrestling business, and the next story kind of leans on. Now, Ronda Rousey is under contract with WWE until April the 10th, 2021. Whether she wants to start a family is a private matter. Now, that was a comment from WWE to TMZ in January 2019. So, night 1 of WrestleMania would be the end of her WWE contract. Of course, Nick Khan, who is one of the executives in WWE, did say that Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch plan on returning to the company very, very soon. This was, of course, the week where Becky Lynch put up a post on Instagram where every first word of the line basically spelled out night one. So the suggestion is that she will be at night one. The suggestion is that she'll be involved in something to do with Bayley. So Bayley has a WrestleMania moment, and we get to see the return of Becky Lynch. Do you know what? They're going to have to pull out all the stops here at WrestleMania 1, night one, not WrestleMania 1. We're going to talk about that very, very soon. But interesting to see your contract is up. It could be a great place for you to sign a brand new contract. Now, again, we're going to talk about WrestleMania Night 1, but Drew McIntyre has been told that he is going to be the opening match of Night 1 of WrestleMania. Now, he's going to be the opening match. This is the first people that are going to be seen by the fans in that stadium, the Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida, and it's going to be Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley. Now, I don't care what anybody wants to say, opening the show, it's a curtain jerker moment, and I'm sorry, but you look at Bret Hart versus Owen Hart at WrestleMania 10, there was no way anybody's going to call that a curtain jerking moment. That's one of the greatest opening matches of all time. You look through later years of WrestleMania, the opening match is always good because it always wants to set the tone. But this is the first match in front of a significant crowd for WWE in a long time, and Drew gets that moment. As far as I'm concerned, this is as good as main eventing Night 1 in many ways. And of course, that means that Night 1 needs a main event. So obviously we'll talk about that when we preview the show. But great to see Drew getting something that's going to be very, very unique. Talking of unique, WWE are again changing their Raw commentary team. They're removing Tom Phillips and replacing him with Adnan Virk. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, who was a former ESPN employee, and he was fired for leaking information. Did WWE really want to be hiring somebody with a history of leaking stuff, particularly with what goes on there? I suppose they keep the announcers separate from the bubble now, seen as before the announcers were like JR, who was part of creative. But to see WWE taking risks and putting new announcers in there is a great thing, because you know what, for me, WWE commentary is awful. It's been so bad, and it's led to me now switching to downloading the shows and skipping through them rather than actually watching them live, because I just can't tolerate Michael Cole, and I can't tolerate Tom Phillips especially, who is basically Michael Cole light. Anyway, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I'm not sure if he actually gets the debut on WrestleMania or if they're going to keep his debut for tomorrow night on Raw. Certainly one of those interesting points that is going to make it interesting to see what happens on Raw. There has to be changes. This has to be the final chapter of this pandemic era, hopefully, and we move into something where we can get to see some creative changes, get to see the company taking a step forward again, because there's very few things in Raw or SmackDown that are exciting people, and that's one of the things that for me is disappointing. I'm a huge wrestling fan. I sit and talk about this every week. Now, one thing that I did see quite interesting, I don't know if anybody watched the Hall of Fames. I watched them back to back. Very impressed with the legacy announcements, very impressed with the production side of things, with having no fans and stuff. Certain people remained in character, which was great. For me, the problem, same as always with WWE, comes down to the fact that everything, although some of the production stuff seemed great, it did seem kind of stunted, and everything was just kind of, it was almost like it was too heavily edited. But one positive was seeing the induction of Rob Van Dam. Now, when Rob Van Dam went in, I know social media lit up and said, he's coming back for one more match. Now, he did say in a roundabout way that he would kind of be okay with coming back for one last match, depending on who it was against. But he has said on After the Bell with Corey Graves that the odds of him coming back for a match, a one-off match, are just as good as going against it, which is another way of saying it's 50-50. So he's not against it, and perhaps there is a cash offer WWE could make for him to come back for that last match. Who would his last match be against, do you think? For me, I would love to see him versus AJ Styles. I think that would be a cool, build that program up and have him versus AJ Styles and have RVD appear on TV for a few weeks. I think that would be cool. And we all know somebody who'd love to face Rob Van Dam is Matt Riddle. He's stated that on Twitter in the past week or so. So it's very cool to see somebody like Rob Van Dam going in the Hall of Fame. It's cool to know we might get him back for one last match. Now, what we used to get was the Andre the Giant Battle Royal on the pre-show normally, because the 7-hour WrestleMania couldn't fit it on the main show. But seeing what they're doing now, they had the WrestleMania edition of SmackDown filmed last week because obviously they needed to tear everything down to build the proper setup for WrestleMania. But we did see some really cool stuff. The Andre the Giant Battle Royal was on SmackDown and was won by Jey Uso. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Jey Uso has been one of the standout performers this year. The only problem is the Andre the Giant Battle Royal has, you look at the people who've won it, it's never done anything for them. Mojo Rawley's not even on the card this year. So that tells you exactly what's happening there with what could have been something important like the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. Now, ratings are down for most companies just now, which you would think is kind of backwards considering we're actually in a period where we should be, everybody's at home, so everybody should be wanting to watch stuff. The momentum and the buzz going into this year's WrestleMania is very different. Last year, we were still in shock at the pandemic shutting everything down. We still didn't know what was happening. Everything was going to be behind closed doors. We knew some of it was pre-taped. This year, we have an audience back. We're returning to some degree of normality. And that's where it gets us to let's talk about our predictions for WrestleMania Night 1 and Night 2. Again, like I say, next week we're going to return to having different sections of the show and some flashy graphics. This week we're just going to put out, hopefully without any massive errors, one recorded show so that we can kind of get some predictions noted down for what happens at WrestleMania. And actually, hopefully, we can get the predictions right, because we're going to be putting on WrestleMania bets this year, and my WrestleMania bets are going to be based heavily on the choices that I make here. So let's look at the card for Night 1. Opening the show is Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre. We did mention it briefly in the news section. For me, I honestly can't see past Drew getting this. There was discussions last year about Drew getting the title back in front of fans. We thought that Randy was going to hold it for a while and that he would get it back from Randy. But for me, I think that this has to be the night where Drew gets the belt. And for storyline purposes, the Hurt Business not being around can easily be explained as the reason, A, why he got it, and B, why he lost it. Not having Cedric Alexander at ringside could be very beneficial. It could be beneficial for him, but also not having those two extra bodies there to beat up Drew McIntyre behind the referee's back. We could explain the heel losing the belt because he doesn't have those people there helping him. For me, Drew McIntyre has to win that. We move on to match 2, Bad Bunny and Damian Priest versus The Miz and John Morrison. Bad Bunny and Damian Priest, as much as I do like the Hey Hey Ho Ho song that The Miz and Morrison did, I do think Bad Bunny and Damian Priest are going to win that one. It's going to get Bad Bunny's picture over social media and going to promote WWE. So hopefully people tune in for Night 2. That's the plan. I think that has to be the plan. Get some publicity, get some people tuning in for Night 2. The New Day, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods versus AJ and Omos. We haven't seen much of Omos. His ability to talk is questionable, but he has spoken a little bit recently, and I don't think he's done all that badly. Is AJ Styles and Omos getting the belt a great thing? Actually, it could be a very good thing, because for me, I'm seeing the Shawn Michaels Diesel dynamic here. Best performer in ring, arguably AJ Styles on any show that he's on, and he has a big bodyguard that kind of takes the flag for him. I think AJ Styles and Omos getting the tag belts there is the best option and makes a lot of sense. Now we move on to a match that doesn't make a lot of sense. Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon, and a few people have said Braun Strowman's a monster who got gunged by a 50-something-year-old and didn't really do much about it other than get some train noises the following week. So this is one of those matches where it could go either way. And for me, I think you would want Braun to win because he's a full-time member of the roster. I certainly think if Shane wins, it's going to be with a lot of interference. There's going to be a lot of help there for Shane McMahon. Certainly think a few people are going to want to demonstrate that they maybe should be on the card by helping out Shane McMahon. I want to see this as a reset for WWE. I've said this earlier on. I want to see this WrestleMania as a reset where things improve. I'm maybe being a bit optimistic, but I would love it to be the reset. Braun Strowman wins, and we start building some people, because just now what we have, somebody gets built up and the following week they lose. There's just no consistency to how we do things. So whilst I think Braun would be the one to benefit the most, I think Shane McMahon's going to win, and there's going to be a lot of chicanery there that's going to help Shane McMahon win. The match that everybody thinks is going to be the match of the night online is Cesaro and Seth Rollins. For me, Cesaro has been one of the standout stars of the lockdown era, which is what we're going to have to call this because nothing's been normal. For me, I think we're going to see Cesaro get the win there. But again, this is a reset. We may see some changes after this where Seth Rollins maybe becomes a bit more serious. I would love to see Seth become a bit more serious because I still think the gimmick that he's doing is just that little bit more comical, especially coming out the Hall of Fame wearing a suit of flames. For me, it just didn't make sense. But hopefully, Cesaro win that will lead to Seth Rollins making some changes. And then we have the tag team turmoil match, which is Lana and Naomi, Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose, the Riot Squad, Natalya and Tamina, Billie Kay and Carmella, and they receive a women's tag team championship match on night 2 of WrestleMania. For me, I'm not overly enamored with this, but I would put my money on Lana and Naomi. This one's a gimme. Nobody really stands out. Riot Squad are the only ones that have been a consistent team for a period of time. Everybody else has just been kind of put together, I think, trying to build up to have some tag teams. So yeah, that would be my pick. I think Lana and Naomi that will get the title shot on night 2. And then we main event with Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair. Now, the great thing here is having a 2-night show, we can actually have both Royal Rumble winners get to main event the shows. That, for me, is a very good thing. And I've seen a few people saying, well, I'm not going to watch because a women's match is in the main event. If that's why you don't want to watch, then that's a very crazy reason not to watch. For me, Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair have done a very good job of building this match up. I would have liked more in terms of how excited I am about it, but they've done everything they can to build this match up. So as far as I can see, very, very happy for them to main event night 1. My money is going to be on Bianca Belair. Like I say, this is a reset for WWE. They have a chance to kind of position certain people where they want them and kind of go afresh next week. So yeah, Bianca Belair to win, and we get that feel-good moment at the end of night 1. We may need that based on my opinion of what's going to happen at the end of night 2. So we move into night 2, April the 11th, Asuka versus Rhea Ripley. This is another instance of somebody just kind of showing up and getting a title shot. It makes no sense. And WWE being WWE instantly put Rhea Ripley straight into a tag match with Asuka. And then there was some animosity between the two. For me, this is a lazy build to a match. And as much as I would love Rhea Ripley to win, I think it makes no sense for her to get the belt yet. And obviously, if she's going to go down the route of being a heel, she needs to have something to kind of be angry about. So somebody has to screw her out of this belt. And there's a list of people that should be getting the shot at Asuka at WrestleMania who've actually been busting their ass on Raw for the past couple of months or the past year or whatever it is. So yeah, I would love Rhea Ripley to win. For me, Asuka's going to win. The Fiend versus Randy Orton. Now, The Fiend is going to have Alexa Bliss there. This is The Fiend's first match since before the Royal Rumble, isn't it? It's been a long time since The Fiend has wrestled. They actually went with the Alexa Bliss Randy Orton story for a while. For me, I think this is going to be, it's just a plain old singles match. There's no gimmick to this. And I think this is one of those matches where you want to go, well, this is where The Fiend's finally going to get something proper, and we're going to go down the route of The Fiend becoming a credible wrestler rather than just being some ethereal being that appears every now and again. I'm stuck on this one. I think I'd love The Fiend to get that win and start being built as something to be scared of and start getting matches and winning things. Something that would be a new experience for Bray Wyatt. I do think Randy Orton's going to win that one, though. But Randy winning could see him finally get his hands on Alexa Bliss. Would that go down well with the audience? Would that be something that actually helps Alexa Bliss kind of come out of this and return to the ring? I think it'd be very interesting. We move on to the Nigerian drum fight for the Intercontinental Championship, which is Big E versus Apollo Crews. I like Apollo Crews. The Nigerian accent is hilarious to me. I have a couple of friends who are from Nigeria, and honestly, people have mocked the fact that the accent is really thick and it sounds almost like it's put on. And the two friends I have from Nigeria will tell you that they can turn it up and turn it down. So if they're around people that may be more predisposed to that voice, then they will do it more because they're understood a bit easier, and also it's how they normally speak. They don't have to soften their accent. But I also know for a fact that the people who are mocking this are mocking it because they think that Apollo Crews is trying to be funny and comical, when in reality, they're because I know people who actually do have the ability to turn this accent up. He's very good at it. I know that some people who do that accent or have a lot of experience with that accent will say, "Oh, there's certain things he's messing up," and there maybe is. I think he's doing very well with something that at least gives him a chance to kind of come across as something a little bit different. The problem with Apollo Crews is he is a big guy. He's athletic. He can do things that a lot of other guys his build can't do. But then what is he? He never really had a gimmick when he came to WWE other than this guy that just smiles a lot. And for me, that's kind of where Big E's been for a while. The similarities between these two guys is actually quite big. And for me, it's a Nigerian drum fight. You have to give the win to Apollo Crews here. So that's my call. Apollo Crews is going to win, and he's going to get the Intercontinental Championship. There's going to be no screwy finish here. Now, this is the second big celebrity cameo of the night. For night two, we get the second cameo. Night one was Bad Bunny. Night two, of course, is Logan Paul. Now, I'm not a Logan Paul fan, but he's a YouTube star. He will bring eyes to the product. And for me, the most entertaining story WWE have is the conspiracy videos of Sami Zayn. I think it's a great story. There are people out there who think like that. You just need to look at Facebook. You just need to look at Twitter, particularly when it comes to Scottish politics. These kind of conspiracies exist all the time. Kevin Owens has said that he wants to jump off the pirate ship. For me, I think that would be one of the standout moments of WrestleMania. And certainly, they've put a lot of effort into building the WrestleMania set, something that if you go to WWE's Twitter, you'll see that they have the video up already. I would love to see Kevin Owens win that one, but also to get his hands on Logan Paul, because then that video is going to be kind of showing up on social media, and all Logan Paul's followers are going to be watching it as well, and they're going to want to come and see what the hell this Kevin Owens guy's about. For me, that'd be hilarious. Now, we were talking about people just kind of being thrown together for the tag team turmoil match on night one. Matt Riddle and Sheamus seem to almost been kind of thrown together, and it's a very weird one for me. I get it. It's a match to get Riddle on the card, and the controversy surrounding Riddle kind of always leaves that asterisk for me just now. But the story of how they were put together, of Riddle just walking up with a scooter and Sheamus hitting him in the, well, I won't say the word because it might hurt me just saying it, but for me, that it doesn't make any sense. It's just a match thrown together at the last minute. I would have to say I think Riddle's going to win that. There's no value in Sheamus carrying the US title at this point. Certainly, they haven't built anybody up to challenge for any of the belts in the company. So, building up a champion in Riddle and building up some challengers like Sheamus, like perhaps even Randy Orton, people like that would be very interesting to see. Damian Priest would be a good, Miz, Morrison would be good challengers. And I think particularly WWE have struggled with building people in the lockdown era. Now, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler would be, with Reginald, will be facing the tag team turmoil winners, which I believe I said was Lana and Naomi. That was my call. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler retaining that title, I think, would make the bookies happy. But I do think if Lana and Naomi get to night two, I think they might get it. That might be the payoff from this whole bullying story, to show that bullies don't always prosper. For me, that would be, if it is Lana and Naomi, I think they're going to get the win. Now, we move on to Roman Reigns versus Edge versus Daniel Bryan. These are three people who were forced to walk away from the business. Edge for a number of years Daniel Bryan, not for as many years, but thought he was done too. And then Roman Reigns with his leukemia a couple of years ago. They all returned from their absences, different people. I think with perspective. I mean, Roman Reigns had leukemia before and had come through it, so he knew that he had a fighting chance if he looked after himself. But this is Roman Reigns, who walked away from last year's WrestleMania due to the pandemic and what he felt was an unsafe workplace. He came back with an attitude that, for me, he should have had years ago. And for a while, I thought it was too little, too late. But I think it's come across really well. The stuff with Jey Uso was very good. And the fact that he's doing the head of the table thing has been kind of entertaining. For me, there's a problem. And that was Roman Reigns versus Edge was the advertised match. Then they add in Daniel Bryan. Instantly, the first thing I saw on social media was, well, this has just been done so Daniel Bryan takes the heat and he's the one that's going to get beat on the night. I think WWE are going to want you to think that. And I think that we have to see Edge win the belt. That has to be the payoff from this storyline. And I think, for me, whilst Daniel Bryan would want to win it, I think the old school fan in Daniel Bryan helping Edge to get the belt and then demanding to be the first challenger would be very interesting. Because then Daniel Bryan can turn around and say, well, you only have it because I was there. Perhaps Roman Reigns could have Edge beat one or two times and Daniel Bryan's the one that breaks it up. And perhaps Daniel Bryan gets his finisher and that ever the opportunist, Edge throws him out the ring and you see Roman Reigns getting pinned 1, 2, 3. For me, it's going to be a clean win. Edge is going to beat Roman Reigns. Whatever gaga comes around it, I think Daniel Bryan has to be made into the challenger for the first challenger for Edge. For me, there's a slight problem in the sense that, you know, when Edge has had really hard fought matches last year, 2 against Randy Orton, and the second one he got injured again, and the fear with Daniel Bryan and Edge is always they're always maybe one bump away from something. So hopefully these guys are going to put on a spectacular match because it's the one that's going to end the lockdown WrestleManias. We have to hope this is the one that ends the lockdown WrestleMania. So let's go through them again to make sure we have the winners down pat. We have Drew beating Bobby Lashley, Bad Bunny and Damian Priest, AJ Styles and Omos winning the tag belts, Shane McMahon with a screwy finish, Cesaro beating Seth Rollins, Lana and Naomi, and then Bianca Belair walking away with the title on night 1. Asuka beating Rhea Ripley, Randy Orton beating The Fiend, Apollo Crews beating Big E, Kevin Owens with the win over Sami Zayn, Matt Riddle getting the win, Lana and Naomi winning the tag belts, and then we end beating Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan. How close am I going to be to getting all these right? If you guys have predictions, feel free to leave comments or to head to our Twitter, which is Headlocks Lockdown, without an O in the word down, and let us know who you think is going to win some of the big matches. I know there's only 140 characters over there, but now it's off to go and place my WrestleMania bets. I think Drew's going to be a bet, Sasha and Bianca Belair, Kevin Owens, Edge, and possibly Bad Bunny and Damian Priest. They're going to be my 5 picks for putting on my bets. Let's see if I can make more money than I lose. Anyway, that's it for this week's shorter version of Headlocks and Headphones. Hope you guys look forward to WrestleMania, and I hope you have fun. We'll see you next week for a dig into how good I did in my WrestleMania predictions. We will see you then.